My name is Julia Reyes. I'm 27 years old, and for most of my life, I thought being small made me invisible. But with Mason, I learned something worse. Being visible for the wrong reasons feels like suffocating under a spotlight you never asked for. When we met, he said he liked that I was fun-sized. I laughed back then, thinking it was sweet. Mason stood over 6 feet, all tailored suits and confidence. The kind of man who carried himself like the world owed him space. And me, I was the quiet graphic designer who took up as little of it as possible. For the first few months, I thought we balanced each other, his charm, my calm. He introduced me to his friends as the tiny hurricane who makes my life brighter. But over time, the hurricane became a distraction, the brightness an optical mismatch. His compliments turned to corrections. Maybe wear longer heels next time, Jules. You disappear in photos. Could you stand a little behind me? The lighting makes you look shorter. Just trust me, it's about proportion. Proportion. That word began haunting me. The breaking point came at his company's annual gala 3 weeks ago. Mason worked in corporate marketing, image-obsessed, even off-duty. The event was held in a hotel ballroom filled with expensive perfume and people who judged others by their shoes. I stood by the buffet table holding a glass of champagne, trying not to get lost in the crowd. Mason was across the room laughing with his boss. Then he waved me over. "Come here, babe," he called. I smiled and walked up only for him to casually step aside and gesture at me. "This is Julia, my girlfriend," he told his coworkers, grinning. "She's pocket-sized, keeps me humble." Laughter rippled through the group. Someone joked, "You could carry her around in your briefcase." Mason laughed louder than anyone. My throat went dry. "Don't mind him," one woman said awkwardly. "He's just teasing." But Mason leaned closer and whispered, "Relax. You're too sensitive sometimes." When the band started playing, I excused myself to the restroom. I stared at my reflection, curled hair, cream dress, nude heels, and tried to smile. The mirror smiled back, brittle and tired. Later, as we were leaving, I told him, "That was humiliating." He shrugged. "You're overreacting. I was joking. Everyone knows you're cute." "Cute," I repeated. "Like a puppy?" He sighed, exasperated. "Julia, stop. People notice the difference, that's all. I'm just trying to make it easier for both of us. Manage expectations. By making jokes about me. By being realistic." That word again. Realistic. I stared out the car window during the ride home, the city lights blurring. Mason's reflection flickered beside mine, taller, sharper, endlessly composed. And then as we drove past his apartment, I saw Ty through the window, his roommate sitting on the couch, barefoot, laughing at something on TV. Ty was everything Mason wasn't. Warm, effortless, real. He stood up when we walked in, gave me that easy grin. "Hey, Jules, you look amazing." Mason dropped his keys. "She knows." Ty's expression shifted, reading the tension instantly. "Rough night." I forced a smile. "Just long." He nodded slowly, eyes soft. "Guess that's corporate life for you." That night, after Mason fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen alone. Ty's laughter still echoed faintly from earlier. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe it wasn't my height that made me feel small. Maybe it was the person I kept trying to stand beside. The next morning, Mason handed me a cup of coffee without looking up from his phone. "By the way, my mom wants to meet you next week. Try wearing something polished." I took the cup, hands trembling slightly. "You mean taller?" He glanced up, smirking. I didn't say that. But he didn't have to. That evening, I caught my reflection again in the mirror by the door. Same woman, same body, different eyes. Somewhere deep down, a voice I hadn't heard in months whispered, "Stop shrinking for people who refuse to see you." And for the first time, I didn't silence it. Mason left for a 3-day business trip the next morning. He kissed me on the forehead like I was a child, said, "Don't burn the apartment down," and rolled his suitcase out the door without a backward glance. I stood there for a moment, coffee mug still warm in my hand, staring at the empty space where he'd been. The apartment felt lighter when the door clicked shut, quieter, like even the walls were relieved. Ty emerged from his room in gym shorts, hair damp from a shower, carrying his volleyball bag. "He gone. Yeah." 3 days of peace, he said, grinning. "We should celebrate. With what silence dinner?" "My treat. You look like you need to remember what good company feels like." I tried to laugh it off, but something in his voice, gentle, genuine, unraveled the knot in my chest. "Okay," I said softly. That night, the city was wrapped in summer rain. We cooked together something simple: garlic noodles and roasted vegetables. The smell of butter and basil filled the kitchen. Ty leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me chop tomatoes. "You're different when he's not here," he said. "Different how? Louder. You hum when you cook." I didn't realize. "Yeah," he smiled. "You used to a lot." I shrugged. Guess I stopped having much to hum about. For a while, we just stood there listening to the rain tap the windows. He handed me a towel when I splashed water on my shirt. His fingers brushed mine, warm, deliberate. Mason had never touched me that gently. We ate at the kitchen island, legs almost touching. Ty talked about his volleyball team, how he coached a youth league on weekends. I told him about a design project that Mason said was too artsy to be profitable. Ty tilted his head. "That's the one you showed me last month, right? The poster with the floating lights." "That was gorgeous, Jules." Hearing my nickname in his voice hit me harder than I expected. "Thanks." Mason thought it was self-indulgent. He would. Ty's tone softened. "You know, people like him spend their lives building taller versions of themselves. Doesn't make them any bigger inside." I looked up at him, startled. "You notice everything, don't you?" "I notice you." The air shifted. He didn't mean it flirtatiously, at least not entirely. It felt like he was acknowledging me, really seeing me. I changed the subject, heart pounding. "You always this poetic?" He grinned. "Only when I'm right." Later after dinner, we sat on the couch watching some cooking show neither of us cared about. I was laughing at something ridiculous when Ty looked over, smiling. "You have no idea how nice it is hearing you laugh like that," he said. "Why?" "Because it sounds like you again." For a moment, I forgot to breathe. I turned toward the TV to hide the heat rising in my cheeks. "You should get some sleep. Don't you have practice early?" "Yeah," he said, stretching. "But you know what? This was worth it. Dinner." He shook his head. "Seeing you stop apologizing for existing." My throat tightened. I didn't realize I was. "You do it all the time, Jules." He stepped closer, voice quiet. "You shrink yourself to make room for him. But you don't have to. Not with me." I met his eyes then, dark, steady, a little sad. Something flickered between us, small but dangerous. "I should clean up," I whispered. He nodded, slowly backing away. "Good night, Julia." "Good night, Ty." After he went to his room, I stood by the sink washing dishes, staring out the window at the rain. Each drop against the glass sounded like a heartbeat. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Mason's approval. I was thinking about how it felt to laugh freely. When I went to bed, the apartment smelled faintly of garlic and calm. I dreamed of sunlight spilling across hardwood floors, of being seen not for how I looked, but for the space I filled when I finally stood tall. Mason came home earlier than expected. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sketching designs for a freelance project, music low on my phone. Ty was at the counter, still in his gym clothes, hair damp with sweat, drinking from a water bottle. The air was comfortable, domestic, in a way I'd never felt with Mason. Then the lock clicked. We both looked up. Mason stood in the doorway, suitcase still in hand, rain dripping from his coat. His expression froze when he saw us laughing together. "Well," he said slowly. "Didn't expect an audience." Ty straightened. "You're early." "Flight got in ahead of schedule," Mason replied. His eyes flicked to me. "Looks like someone made themselves right at home." The tension in his voice wasn't subtle. It slithered through the room, coiling around me. "I was just helping Julia with dinner," Ty said evenly. Mason's mouth twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How generous of you. Guess she needs all the help she can get." "Mason," I said, setting my pencil down. "Don't." "What?" he chuckled. "Relax, I'm kidding." But his gaze stayed locked on Ty. "You always hang around like this when I'm gone." Ty didn't answer. The silence stretched. I stood up, anger bubbling under my ribs. "You know what? If you're going to accuse me of something, just say it. I'm not accusing," he said lightly. "Just observing." "It's a little odd, isn't it, my girlfriend cooking with my roommate while I'm out of town?" "Your girlfriend," Ty repeated, voice low. "Pretty sure you treat her more like an accessory." Mason's head snapped toward him. "What did you just say? I said she deserves someone who doesn't make her feel small." The room went still. Rain pattered outside, steady and cold. "Mason," I whispered, "stop turning everything into a performance." He laughed under his breath. "Performance? You mean like this?" He gestured between Ty and me. "You playing house while I'm gone." That was it, the final crack in something already broken. "You humiliated me in front of your coworkers," I said, voice shaking. "You pick at everything I do, everything I am, and now you're jealous because someone actually talks to me like a person." He stared incredulous. Jealous of him. Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. Because he sees me. He scoffed, about to retort, but Ty stepped forward. Don't, he said quietly. You've done enough. Stay out of this, Mason snapped. I would, Ty said, if you treated her like she mattered. And maybe it was the exhaustion, or the way Mason's smirk made my stomach turn, but I moved before I could think. I stepped toward Ty, grabbed his face in both hands, and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't rehearsed. It was relief, sharp, honest trembling. Ty froze for a heartbeat, then kissed me back. Warm, steady, safe. When I pulled away, Mason was standing there, jaw clenched, rain still dripping from his coat, looking like he'd been punched. You have got to be kidding me, he said, voice trembling between rage and disbelief. Ty exhaled slowly. You should go cool off, man. I live here, Mason hissed. Not in this moment, you don't, I said quietly. He blinked at me, stunned. So that's it? You're just what? Throwing everything away for him? No, I said. I'm finally throwing you away. The words hung there heavy as thunder. Mason's face went pale, then red. You'll regret this, Julia. You'll realize people stare for a reason. Maybe, I said. But at least now I'll know what they're staring at, a woman who stopped pretending to be small. He stormed into his room, slamming the door so hard the frames on the wall rattled. Ty stood frozen, breathing hard. Jules, that was, I know. I wiped a tear from my cheek. I didn't plan it. Doesn't mean it wasn't real. I turned toward him. He's going to make my life hell for this. Then we'll handle it, he said softly. Together. His certainty scared me, but also soothed something deep inside. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a shadow in someone else's life. That night, I slept with my door locked, not out of fear, but because I was done being interrupted in my own peace. The next morning, Mason was gone. His suitcase, his coat, even the cologne that usually lingered in the air, gone. For a second, I thought he'd actually left for good. But the note on the counter shattered that hope, staying with my mom for a few days. Try not to embarrass yourself while I'm gone. I stared at the handwriting, controlled, deliberate, arrogant. Even his insults were neatly formatted. Ty came out of his room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He's gone. For now, I said quietly. But he's not finished. Ty frowned. Then we should be ready when he tries something. I smiled faintly. You make it sound like a war. He held my gaze. Julia, with him it is. By the second day, Mason's silence turned into noise. He started posting on social media subtle, carefully worded things that made me look like the villain. Some people mistake attention for affection. Imagine thinking betrayal makes you powerful, and the one that stung most, lesson learned, never date beneath your standards. Each post got likes from his coworkers, even his mom. Ty showed me one night as we were cleaning up dinner. You don't have to look at this, he said. I know, I whispered, but part of me wants to see what kind of story he's telling now. Ty hesitated. You shouldn't have to defend yourself for choosing peace. Peace doesn't trend, I muttered. A few days later, Mason texted me. Dinner with my mom Friday. She wants closure. You owe her that much. I didn't owe either of them a damn thing. But Ty, ever the steady voice, said gently, maybe facing them is better than hiding. He feeds on the idea that you're avoiding him. So Friday night I went. Patricia Mason's mother greeted me with a perfectly rehearsed smile and eyes that scanned me from head to toe. Julia, she said warmly, you look petite as ever. Good to see you too, I replied, forcing a smile. Mason sat across from me, posture flawless, jaw tight. Ty had insisted on coming along, though Mason clearly hadn't expected that. Patricia poured herself wine, so she began. I understand there's been tension. Tension, Ty said dryly. That's one word for it. Mason shot him a glare. This isn't your conversation. Ty leaned back. You made it mine when you started spreading lies. Patricia gasped. Excuse me. Ty turned to her calmly. Your son publicly humiliated her for months. When she stopped tolerating it, he decided to rewrite the story. That's not closure, that's damage control. Mason slammed his glass down. You don't know anything about relationships. And you do, Ty countered. Because from where I'm sitting, you confuse dominance with devotion. Patricia's hand trembled slightly as she set her wine down. Mason, is that true? He laughed bitterly. Of course not. He's just defending his little girlfriend. Little, I repeated. The word hit me like a slap. Ty's voice was calm but sharp. You measure love in inches, Mason. I measure it in effort. That silence that followed was loud enough to break something invisible. Mason stared at him, incredulous. You think you're better than me? Ty didn't blink. No, just taller in all the ways that matter. I thought Mason would explode, but instead he leaned back smiling coldly. You know what's funny, Julia? You always wanted someone to stand up for you. Congratulations. You found your guard dog. I stood up. And you found a mirror. Don't like what you see. Patricia opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. Thank you for dinner, I said quietly. But I don't need closure. I need distance. Ty followed me out, his hand brushing mine as we stepped into the night air. You okay? I'm shaking, I admitted. That's adrenaline, he said softly. Means you finally fought back. We walked in silence for a few blocks. Then I looked up at him and said, You shouldn't have to defend me. He smiled. I didn't. I just reminded him what it looks like when someone does. For the first time, I realized that Mason's power over me wasn't real. It was just noise I'd mistaken for truth. The next morning, Ty texted me a photo of a sticky note he'd left on the fridge. You don't need to be taller to stand tall. I laughed out loud. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I was winning the war. Mason didn't take losing well. The night after the dinner, he started a new campaign, Quiet, Clever Venom, disguised as charm. He began posting photos with women he'd never mentioned before. Taller women. Always taller. Captions like, Finally, someone who doesn't mind heels. Confidence is everything. Some people make you feel small. Others remind you how tall you can stand. I didn't need to read between the lines. The subtext screamed my name. Ty told me to ignore it. He's spiraling, he said. People who lose control get loud. But it still stung. Every word felt like he was trying to pull me back into the shrinking space he'd built for me. Then one evening, I came home and found him sitting in our living room. No warning, no text. Just there, legs crossed, sipping from my mug like he still owned the place. Hey, Jules, he said casually. We need to talk. I froze in the doorway. You don't live here anymore. Correction, he said, grinning. My name's still on the lease. Ty wasn't home yet. I set my bag down slowly. What do you want, Mason? I want to understand how you went from I love you to that. He waved vaguely at the apartment, the empty wine glasses, the faint trace of Ty's cologne in the air in less than a month. I crossed my arms. Maybe I realized love shouldn't feel like performing for an audience. He smirked. And you think he's not performing? Please. Guys like Ty are all muscles and fantasy. You're his project. I held his gaze. Then let me be one he finishes. The smirk vanished. Wow, he said softly. You really think you've won? I don't play to win anymore. I just stopped playing your game. Right then the door opened. Ty stepped inside, hair damp from the rain gym bag slung over his shoulder. He froze when he saw Mason. Didn't realize we had company. Mason stood, straightened his jacket. Relax. I'm just checking in on my ex and her rebound. Ty's voice was low. You've checked in enough. Mason laughed under his breath, brushing past him on the way out. Enjoy the leftovers. When the door shut, I finally let myself breathe. My hands were trembling. Ty walked over gently, pried the mug from my grip. You don't have to face him alone anymore. I leaned into him, the tension spilling out as tears. He's not going to stop Ty, I know, he said quietly, but neither are we. 2 weeks later, Mason escalated. He started bringing people over his new dates. Always tall, always loud, always making sure I was home when they arrived. The first was a model type named Renee, who greeted me with a smile too sweet to be real. You're Julia, right? Mason told me all about you. You're the tiny artist, I smiled tightly. It's designer, actually. Right, she said, glancing down. He said you were cute. Ty arrived just as Mason wrapped an arm around Renee's waist, guiding her to the couch like he was hosting a show. We were just leaving, Ty said evenly, grabbing his keys. Julia, you ready? Mason smirked. Date night again. Must be nice being someone's project. Ty didn't take the bait. He just looked him dead in the eyes and said, at least she's not someone's prop. Mason's smirk faltered. That was the last time I saw Mason smile. From then on, the apartment became unbearable. He'd slam cabinets when we were home, hum under his breath whenever Ty touched me, leave passive-aggressive notes like, please keep your laughter down. Some of us have dignity. One morning, he accidentally spilled coffee on one of my sketches. I stared at the brown streak cutting across the paper like a wound and said nothing. That night, Ty walked into the living room holding a rental listing. Lease is up soon, he said. I found a place. 2 bedrooms, balcony, no Mason. I blinked. You mean us? He smiled, gentle but certain. Yeah, you me peace. I think we've earned it. For a long moment, I just stared at him. Then I nodded. Yes. When Mason found out he lost whatever mask he had left. You're moving in with him. After this, he shouted, voice echoing off the kitchen walls. You're insane. You've been dating 3 weeks? 3 weeks more honest than our entire relationship, I said quietly. He scoffed. You'll regret this, Julia. He'll get bored of playing hero. Maybe I said opening the door for him to leave, but at least I'll know I chose peace over pity. He didn't move. His jaw worked as if he wanted to say something cruel, but all that came out was, You always wanted to look up to someone, didn't you? Guess now you have to. I smiled sadly. No Mason. I just stopped looking down on myself. He left, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell. Ty appeared a second later, calm as ever. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. He's just small. Ty smiled. Finally said it. We signed in the new lease the next morning, and as we packed, I found the step stool Mason once mocked me for needing. Ty stuck a sticker on it that said, Julia's Ladder to Joy. It was ridiculous and perfect. It had been almost a month since I'd last spoken to Mason. I should have known silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I got a message from a mutual friend, Amy. Hey, Jules, can you come by Mason's place tonight? He just wants to clear the air. It's not a trap promise. That last word promise made my stomach twist. Ty frowned when I showed him the text. He's planning something. I know, I said. But if I don't show up, he'll twist it into me, avoiding responsibility. I want this over. Ty hesitated, then nodded. You call me the second anything feels off. I will, I said, though my hands were already trembling. When I arrived at Mason's apartment, I immediately knew something was wrong. 5 people were waiting in the living room. Amy Marcus, 2 other mutuals, and Mason himself, sitting in the center like a host about to unveil a show. The air felt heavy with rehearsed sympathy. Julia, Amy began, her voice soft but formal. We're worried about you. I blinked. Worried, Marcus nodded. We've all noticed changes since... Ty, you seem impulsive, defensive. You're not yourself. I looked at Mason. He sat back, arms folded, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. This isn't an attack, he said smoothly. We just want to help you see that you're acting out of pain, not clarity. I almost laughed. Pain, I'd been more at peace these past weeks than I'd been in years. Amy sighed. You told me Mason made you feel small, but isn't jumping straight into another relationship a little desperate, Mason offered helpfully. I turned toward him. You organized this? He lifted his hands innocently. They reached out to me, concerned. I just provided a space. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. My pulse pounded in my ears. Every word he spoke was designed to sound reasonable while painting me as unhinged. I could feel my calm slipping. But then I remembered something Ty had said. You don't fight his fire with fire. You let him burn himself out under the light. So I took a breath and smiled. If you're all here to talk about who I am, maybe you should hear who he was. Mason stiffened. Julia. I took out my phone. You remember this? I pressed play. His voice filled the room, sharp and mocking from a recording I'd kept months ago. Can you please not stand next to me when Brad and Amy come over? The height thing's just too obvious. I don't want them thinking I'm desperate or settling. The room went dead silent. Amy's face went pale. Marcus's jaw clenched. Mason. Amy whispered. You said that. He stammered. That's out of context. There's more, I said quietly, scrolling. Do you want me to play the part where you said I look like your little sister in heels? Mason's composure cracked. You're twisting this. It was a joke. No, I said, steady now. It was a habit. Marcus stood up. You told us she was paranoid, Mason, that she was insecure. I was trying to protect her image. Amy shook her head. No, you were protecting yours. One by one, they started gathering their things. Amy muttered, I can't believe this. Marcus avoided his eyes entirely. Mason, you literally told me last month that dating Julia was like dating a teenager, Marcus said at the door. That's messed up. And then they were gone. Just me and him. The silence between us was thick electric final. You destroyed my friendships, he said through clenched teeth. No, Mason, I replied. You destroyed them when you built them on lies. I made one mistake. You made a habit of shrinking people to fit your frame. He scoffed, voice breaking. I wasn't shallow. I just have standards. I picked up my coat. And now you can keep them, all 6 feet of them. As I turned to leave, he said quietly, You'll miss me. I stopped at the door. I'll miss the version of me you never let exist. Outside, the night air was cool, crisp, cleansing. Ty was waiting by his car, leaning against the hood, arms folded. When I saw him, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. How bad, he asked. I smiled faintly. He called it an intervention. Ty chuckled. Guess he forgot interventions are for people who want to change. He opened the passenger door. You ready to go home, home? I repeated softly, sliding in. Yeah, let's go home. As we drove off, I looked out the window at the apartment shrinking behind us. For once, it wasn't me doing the shrinking. We moved into our new apartment 2 weeks later. It was smaller than the old one, but it didn't feel that way. Sunlight poured through the balcony doors in the morning. And laughter. Real laughter echoed through the rooms at night. There were boxes still unopened, paint swatches taped to the wall, and a single step stool in the kitchen covered in stickers that read, Julia's Ladder to Joy. Ty had written it in black marker and grinned like a kid when I saw it. You can't build a new life without a little height, he'd said. I rolled my eyes, but secretly I loved it. Life with Ty wasn't cinematic or dramatic. It was steady, quiet, and full of tiny kindnesses I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. He made breakfast before his morning runs. He left sticky notes on my sketch pad that said things like, Stop underestimating yourself, and you're taller than your fears. Sometimes I caught myself waiting for criticism that never came. One night, while we were unpacking the last of my design awards, Ty said softly, You ever think about how much space he took up in your head? All the time, I admitted. He filled every corner with noise. You helped me hear myself again. He smiled. Nah, you just turned the volume back up. 3 months passed before I ran into Mason again. I was at a grocery store, standing on my tiptoes to grab a jar from the top shelf, when a voice behind me said, Still need a ladder, huh? My heart skipped, then settled. Mason stood there, cart half full, new woman by his side, tall poised, everything he used to think he wanted. He smiled, but there was something brittle behind it. Julia. Long time. I nodded. Hi, Mason. He looked at the ring of keys in my hand, noticed the tan line on my finger from where I used to wear the bracelet he gave me. Guess you've moved on. I did, I said simply. From you. From everything. The woman beside him smiled politely. This must be your ex. Mason cleared his throat. Yeah, the one I told you about. I smiled back. Hopefully you left out the part where you tried to schedule an intervention about me. The woman blinked. Mason went red. Good seeing you, Julia. You too, I said lightly, then turned to leave. As I walked away, I heard her whisper, that was rude, and his low mutter, You don't get it. For once I didn't look back. When I got home, Ty was on the balcony, stringing Fairy Lights music, playing softly from his phone. Guess who I ran into, I said. He looked over his shoulder. Mason. Mm-hmm. Ty chuckled. How'd that go? Like running into a ghost. All reflection, no substance. He grinned. You okay? I nodded. Better than okay. I didn't feel small this time. Ty walked over, pulling me into his arms. That's because you're not. We stood there for a while, the city lights flickering below his heartbeat steady against my cheek. He kissed my forehead and said, You know what I love about us. What? When I hug you, your head fits perfectly here, he said, resting his chin gently on my hair. And when you hug me, I forget the world even exists. I smiled. You make me sound like a puzzle piece. Exactly, he whispered. The kind that wasn't supposed to fit, but does anyway. Weeks later, while scrolling online, I stumbled across one of Mason's old posts. He'd deleted everything about me, every subtle dig, every polished caption. His account was quiet now. I didn't feel satisfaction, just closure. Ty came up behind me, peering at my screen. You know what they say about people like him? What they build mirrors, not homes. And you, I build ladders, he winked, so you can reach everything you want. I laughed, setting my phone aside. We spent that evening painting the walls of our new living room bare feet, streaked with color, both of us humming off key. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that night, as we curled up on the couch surrounded by half-done work and takeout boxes, Ty whispered, You know people still stare at us. I smiled against his shoulder. Yeah, but now I finally like the reason why. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Good, because I'm not planning on going anywhere.